What if time isn't out there on the clock, but only inside your mind? The seconds you feel passing, the hours you think you've lived, what if they're just the brain's way of stitching events together? In joy, time races. In fear, it stretches. And sometimes, in the middle of an ordinary day, it disappears entirely. Tonight, here at Neuro Academy, we'll walk through the hidden machinery that makes you feel now, uncover how emotion bends the clock, and explore moments when the timeline itself breaks. If time lives only in your mind, are you ever truly in the present? Stay with me as we step into the quiet illusion that shapes every moment you've ever known. You open your eyes, and before you even notice the light or the sounds around you, something deep inside has already begun counting. Not with numbers, not with words, but with a silent, steady pulse that measures your life in invisible units. You do not ask it to begin. It never stopped. Even in your sleep, even in moments when you were far from conscious thought, this inner rhythm has been marking the passage of your existence. Imagine for a moment that you are floating in a dark, endless sea. No sun, no moon, no stars. Just the soft sensation of your body moving gently with the water. You can't see or hear anything, yet somehow you still know that moments are passing. There is no clock, no calendar, no sound of footsteps or ticking to guide you, and yet you are not lost. Deep in your mind, a hidden clock has been keeping time, one beat after another. This is not the kind of clock you can wind or set. It lives in the quiet architecture of your brain, woven into the connections of cells, carried in the subtle dance of chemicals, pulsing in patterns you cannot feel, but that shape everything you do. Scientists call parts of this network timekeepers, clusters of neurons and loops of circuits that measure and predict the unfolding of moments. But that is only the mechanical description. In truth, they are more like the heartbeat of your awareness, the background tempo to which your life plays out. It begins with something small, bursts of electrical activity in tiny groups of cells. These bursts are not random. They form a pattern, a rhythm, that allows your brain to predict the arrival of the next beat before it happens. Like a musician tapping their foot before the song begins, your mind sets a tempo for the world you are about to experience. Without it, the sequence of events would feel unmoored, like beads slipping from a broken string, moments with no order, no meaning. Picture this inner clock as a circle of lanterns in the dark. Each one lights up in turn, creating the illusion of movement, of flow. The speed at which they ignite sets your sense of passing time. Sometimes the lights seem to move faster, sometimes slower, yet the circle itself never stops turning. And even though you are not aware of it most of the time, your every thought and action is woven to this glowing wheel. You can test its presence in small ways. Try closing your eyes and counting to 10 without speaking. You might notice that your 10 is not exactly 10 seconds in the world outside. It may be shorter or longer. That difference is your brain's clock, showing its unique pace. This is why no two people measure a minute in quite the same way. Your internal rhythm is yours alone, shaped by biology, by mood, by the countless invisible variables of your inner life. What is extraordinary is how this inner measurement exists without any external signal. Even without sunlight, without the ticking of a watch, your mind maintains its sense of sequence. This is why astronauts, adrift in the silence of space, still wake and sleep in cycles. Why someone in a quiet room can feel a second pass, even with nothing to measure it against. The brain's timekeepers are always at work, like a lighthouse whose beam sweeps endlessly over a dark and shifting sea. And yet this clock is not perfect. It drifts, it bends, it can be fooled. Under certain conditions, your mind's measurement of time can stretch or shrink, creating illusions so strong that they feel more real than the numbers on any clock. Later we will explore those distortions, the moments when seconds expand into eternity or years vanish like a handful of sand in the wind. But before that, it's worth asking, if this clock exists only inside you, then what does it truly measure? Because perhaps the seconds and minutes you feel are not the same as those that exist in the world outside. Perhaps your inner time is not a reflection of reality at all, but a creation, an invention your mind uses to make sense of change, to give meaning to motion. If that's true, then your life is not ruled by the ticking of the universe, but by the rhythm your brain chooses to play. And if the conductor of your life's symphony is hidden somewhere behind your eyes, then what happens when the music changes? What happens when the inner clock slips out of sync with the world? That is where our journey turns next, toward the strange, slippery ways your mind bends time without your permission. You know that feeling when the minutes seem to stretch out like a road disappearing into a desert horizon, every step heavy, every breath slow. And then other times whole hours vanish without a trace, like pages missing from a book you swore you had just been reading. It is tempting to blame the clock, to imagine the hands moving faster or slower in some invisible trick. But the clock on the wall never changes speed, only yours does. Imagine sitting in a waiting room, the air still, the ticking of a clock steady but sharp. You glance up at the second hand, it moves. You look away, it moves again. Time feels like it is dragging its feet, reluctant to carry you forward. Now imagine the opposite. You are at dinner with a friend you haven't seen in years. Laughter spills into the air. Stories weave together like threads in a warm tapestry, and before you know it, the evening is gone. The same number of seconds have passed in both moments, but your mind has lived them differently. The reason is that your perception of time is not a fixed scale. It's more like elastic. It stretches when your attention has nowhere else to go, and it snaps back when you are deeply engaged. Neuroscientists studying this have found that the brain's timekeepers, those patterns of neural firing, are influenced by more than just raw rhythm. They are shaped by focus, by novelty, and by emotion. Think of it like walking along a path. When the path is empty and flat, you notice every step, every stone, every shadow. The journey feels long, but when the path winds through unfamiliar scenery, full of color and shape, your attention is drawn outward. You stop counting steps. You simply move. And when you finally look back, the path seems shorter than it was. Part of this lies in how your brain processes and stores memories. In dull, repetitive moments, fewer markers are laid down in your mind, so the stretch feels longer in the moment, but shorter in hindsight. In rich, varied moments, your mind creates more memory markers, which makes time feel shorter while you're in it, but longer when you look back. It's a quiet paradox. Boredom makes time crawl now, but disappear later, while excitement makes time race now, but linger in memory. Picture a river. When the water is calm, you can watch every ripple and leaf drift by. When it is rushing and full of rapids, you cannot track every detail. The movement blurs into a single rush. This is how your inner clock reacts to the speed of your attention. The river itself, the seconds and minutes, never changes. Only the way you drift through it does. There is another layer to this: novelty. Your brain pays more attention to new experiences than to familiar ones. It's an old survival trick. New things might be dangerous or rewarding, so they demand more focus. This heightened attention floods your mind with more data, which alters your perception of how long a moment lasts. That's why childhood summers feel endless. Nearly everything is new, so your brain fills the days with countless memory markers. As you grow older, fewer things are truly new, and the days seem to blur. And then there is emotion. Fear can stretch a second into what feels like a minute. Joy can collapse an hour into a heartbeat. In both cases, your body's chemistry is involved. Adrenaline sharpens your senses, making each moment more detailed and thus longer in perception. Dopamine, the chemical of reward, can make moments glide past unnoticed because your mind is fully immersed in pleasure. This is why, when you recall a car accident, you may remember tiny fragments in slow motion, the way the glass fractured, the sound of metal bending, the color of the sky in that exact moment. Your brain, flooded with stress hormones, processed each frame in such detail that it now plays back as if slowed down. The moment felt stretched then, and remains stretched in memory. And yet, knowing all this still leaves a deeper question unanswered. If your inner clock is so elastic, if it can bend and twist under the weight of attention, novelty, and emotion, what is the true time you are living in? Does such a thing even exist for you? Or is your reality always filtered through these shifting lenses, so that the seconds you live are never the same as the seconds the universe ticks away? If the answer leans toward the latter, then every moment you experience is not an objective slice of reality, but a personal construct. And if time is constructed in your mind, could it be that you have more power over it than you think? To explore that possibility, we have to look at the machinery more closely, the living systems in your brain that keep their own beat, even when the world outside is silent. Somewhere inside your head, tucked among the folds and curves of living tissue, there are tiny clusters of cells that hum with rhythm. They do not tick like a watch, nor swing like a pendulum, but they keep time all the same. Scientists have given them names: suprachiasmatic nucleus, basal ganglia, cerebellum. But for now, imagine them as a small ensemble of musicians. Each plays a different instrument, each with its own tempo, yet together they create a symphony that guides your sense of time. The conductor of this hidden orchestra sits just above where your optic nerves cross, in a place smaller than a grain of rice. It listens to light. When daylight touches your eyes, even if you're not looking at the sun, signals travel back to this tiny cluster. The conductor shifts the tempo, aligning your inner rhythms with the turning of the earth. This is one of the reasons you wake and sleep in cycles. It's not just habit, it's biology tuning itself to the sky. But there is another section of the orchestra that doesn't rely on sunlight at all. This one measures short bursts of time, the span of a thought, the pause between footsteps, the seconds before you catch a ball. These musicians play from within your basal ganglia, deep in the center of your brain, and they are sensitive to attention. When you focus intently, their rhythm can quicken. When you drift, they slow, letting moments stretch out. And then there is the cerebellum, an ancient structure at the base of your skull. It is like a percussionist, marking fine intervals, so your movements are timed with grace. Without it, walking, speaking, even catching yourself when you stumble, would feel clumsy and unpredictable. The cerebellum's timing doesn't just shape movement, it shapes the pace at which you feel the world unfolding. To picture this, think of an old mechanical clock tower. The main gears turn slowly, marking the hours. Smaller gears spin faster, marking the minutes and seconds. The chimes sound at precise moments, not because of a single part, but because the entire system works in harmony. Your brain's timekeepers are like that. They layer rhythms on rhythms, combining long cycles with short pulses until a single fluid sense of time emerges. But unlike the clock tower, your brain's timing system is alive. It adapts. It can be tuned by experience, thrown off by fatigue, or reshaped entirely by injury or disease. A few missing beats in this mental orchestra can make seconds feel wrong, events feel out of order, or cause the present moment to arrive too soon or too late for you to act. There is beauty in this imperfection. It means that time, as you feel it, is not fixed. It is a living collaboration between the external world and the private tempo of your mind. It explains why, in a silent room with no cues, your brain can still keep a sense of how long you've been there. It also explains why that sense can fade, dissolve, or distort in certain conditions, because this internal orchestra plays not for the universe, but for you. And here is the strange truth. You are both the listener and the conductor. While much of your timing system runs without your conscious input, you can influence it. You do it when you breathe slowly to calm yourself, shifting your body's rhythm and slowing your sense of the moment. You do it when you immerse yourself in music or movement, syncing your inner beat to an external one. You even do it when you lose yourself in thought, letting the musicians in your brain drift from their strict measures into something freer, less bound by the seconds passing in the outside world. The more you realize that these clocks are biological rather than mechanical, the more a question begins to take shape. If your brain's rhythms can change, if they can be bent by light, emotion, attention, or even intention, then is time itself changing or only your perception of it? To answer that, we need to step into an even more unsettling idea that the now you believe you are living in might not truly exist at all, at least not in the way you think, that your present is already in the past by the time you notice it, and once you see why, you may never trust the moment again. You lift your hand and snap your fingers. The sound is immediate, or so it feels, but hidden in the space between action and awareness, a delay has crept in, a fraction of a second, too small to notice, too constant to question. By the time you hear the snap in your mind, it has already happened in the world outside you. This is the first quiet betrayal of your brain's promise of the present. You never truly live in the now. Every moment you experience is a reconstruction, assembled from signals that have already arrived. Think of light. It travels fast, faster than anything else you know, but even so it takes time for it to reach your eyes. The same with sound, with touch. Then, once those signals enter your body, they must be translated into electrical language, carried along nerves, routed through networks, and stitched together in your brain. Only then do you experience them as a single, unified now. It's a miracle of coordination, but it is not instant. The present you live in is always slightly behind the world's true events. Like a news broadcast with a hidden delay, your mind is feeding you an edited version of reality, one that smooths out timing differences between senses so the world feels coherent. To make this easier to picture, imagine a theatre stage behind a curtain. The actors' sight, sound, touch, taste, smell are all performing their parts, but they don't all arrive at the curtain at the same moment. Sight gets there first, sound a little later, touch perhaps later still. The director, your brain, waits until everyone is in position before lifting the curtain, showing you a single polished scene. It feels immediate, but what you're seeing has already played out. This delay isn't just a quirk, it's a necessity. Without it, the world would feel fragmented, out of sync. A bird's wings would flap in silence. Then the sound would come after. Your own words would echo in your head, out of rhythm with your mouth. By holding back and aligning the signals, your brain gives you a smooth, seamless now. The cost is that the now is never real time. There's a poetic irony in this. You live your entire life just behind the moment, like walking through a forest where every sound you hear was made a heartbeat ago. You cannot change it, because to truly live in the instant would mean sacrificing the unity of your experience. You would know more quickly, but understand less. And yet, this delay opens a strange door. If your present is already the past, then what you think of as now is a construct, a story your brain tells you to make the world coherent. The real moment, the raw truth of time, has already moved on, which means you are always chasing it. Some researchers have wondered whether this is why humans are so obsessed with predicting the future, why we plan, imagine, and anticipate. Perhaps we are built to look forward because we can never truly stand in the present. Perhaps we are always leaning into what comes next, because by the time the present reaches us, it's already gone. But if the present is a reconstruction, then what happens when the reconstruction changes? When your brain edits the sequence before showing it to you? This is not hypothetical. Your mind can and does rearrange the order of events you experience. And in those moments, time itself seems to break. That fracture is where we will go next, into the territory where your memory, perception, and sense of sequence are no longer aligned, and the arrow of time begins to twist. You are walking down a quiet street at night. The air is cool. The light from the lamps spills in soft pools on the pavement. A sound reaches you. Footsteps. You glance over your shoulder, but the street behind you is empty. Still the sound is there, crisp and clear. You quicken your pace. Moments later, you see someone turn the corner ahead of you. Only now does your mind settle. as if the sequence has finally made sense. But what if I told you that your brain might have rewritten that sequence in real time, that it sometimes takes events arriving out of order and rearranges them before you become aware of them, giving you a story that feels smooth and logical, even if it never truly happened that way? This process is known, in the language of science, as temporal binding. Your brain has a deep preference for coherence. It will bend the sequence of perceptions so that cause seems to lead to effect, even if the actual events were scrambled. If you press a button and a light flashes a fraction of a second later, your brain may shift the timing of both events in your mind so that they seem closer together. It feels seamless. It feels real, but it is an illusion. Imagine shuffling a deck of cards. The cards are your sensory inputs: touch, sound, sight. They don't always arrive at the same time. Your brain, acting like a dealer, reorders them into a neat spread before placing them in your conscious awareness. This is why you can watch a movie and feel that the actor's lips and voice are perfectly synchronized, even if the audio is slightly delayed. Your mind does the adjustment for you without asking. Most of the time, this is a gift. It smooths out the noise in reality so you can act confidently, but sometimes this same gift can betray you. In moments of high emotion or shock, the brain's editing can become more aggressive, changing the order of what you remember. This is one reason eyewitness accounts can differ. Two people can see the same event, but the timing as each brain recorded it may not match. There's another, even stranger effect at play: the post-diction phenomenon. Unlike prediction, which guesses the future, post-diction alters your perception of the past based on information that arrives later. For example, in a famous experiment, participants were shown a pattern of lights that seemed to move. The final light in the sequence determined the path they thought they had seen, even though that final light hadn't appeared yet when their brain first processed the motion. Their perception of what happened changed to fit the new ending. It's like reading a mystery novel, where the last page suddenly changes the meaning of every clue you thought you'd understood. Your mind doesn't just tell you the present, it also quietly rewrites the past to keep the story neat. This raises a troubling question. If your brain can alter your perception of the order of events, then how much of what you call memory is actually a faithful record, and how much is a carefully edited version created after the fact? And if time is the thread that ties your life together, what happens when that thread is rearranged? Perhaps you've felt it before in déjà vu, when a moment feels as though it has already happened, even though it is unfolding for the first time, or in the strange sensation after waking from a dream, when the fragments of the dream seem to belong to real memories. These are small cracks in the continuity of your timeline, hints that the arrow of time in your mind is not as straight as you believe. But these are only the mildest examples. There are conditions and experiences where the disruption goes far deeper, where time can seem to stand still, loop back on itself, or shatter into pieces that will not fit back together. And to understand how fragile your perception truly is, we must step into the place where memory becomes the engine of time and see how your mind uses the past to build the present. Close your eyes and think of the last time you smelled rain on warm pavement. You might feel the air grow heavier in your memory, see faint ripples in puddles, hear the soft hiss of water striking leaves. In that instant, you are no longer here. You are there, standing in that past moment. This is the quiet magic of memory. It is not just a record, it is a time machine. When you recall an event, your brain doesn't simply play back a file. It rebuilds the experience from stored fragments, reactivating many of the same neural pathways that fired during the original moment. To your mind, remembering and living are not as different as they seem. Deep inside the brain lies a seahorse-shaped structure called the hippocampus. You can imagine it as an archivist with a gift for arranging moments in order. It stores not just the content of a memory, but the context, the sense of when something happened. Without it, memories become like loose photographs with no date. shuffled into confusion. The hippocampus works closely with other regions to weave your personal timeline. Each time you recall a memory, the connections between the details and their place in time are refreshed, like ink darkening on a page. But here's the twist. Each retrieval also offers a chance for change. The memory is reassembled, and in the process, small details can shift. New information can blend into old scenes. In this way, your past is not fixed. It is rewritten every time you visit it. This has profound consequences for your experience of time. If the past is reconstructed in the present, then your sense of the present is partly built on things that are themselves unstable. Your mind is constantly editing not just the events of your life, but their order, their texture, their emotional tone, and because your present decisions are shaped by your memories, the fluidity of the past ripples forward into the future. Consider how emotion colors this process. A joyful memory, recalled in a moment of sorrow, can take on a bittersweet hue. A painful memory recalled during a time of strength may feel less heavy. These shifts change the way you perceive the distance between then and now. Some memories feel like they happened yesterday, others like they belong to another lifetime, even if they are the same age in calendar years. Your brain also uses memory to predict the future. This is called prospective memory, and it is one of the mind's most remarkable tricks. By drawing on patterns from the past, your brain rehearses possible outcomes, allowing you to anticipate what might happen next. In doing so, it effectively simulates a future event as if you had already experienced it. And in a strange way, once you've vividly imagined something, it can become woven into your mental timeline almost as if it truly happened. Think of a person waiting to meet someone they have never seen before. They picture the moment in detail, the handshake, the sound of the other person's voice. When the meeting finally happens, it can feel eerily familiar because the imagined moment has already been given a place in the mind's record. This fluidity between past, present, and imagined future makes your sense of time less like a straight road and more like a network of paths, with memories as stepping stones. At any moment your mind can leap forward or backward, connecting points that are distant in clock time but close in feeling or association. If you could watch this process from above, you might see your life not as a line, but as a constellation, moments scattered across an inner sky, with your attention lighting one star after another in patterns that shift as you move. But what happens when this constellation becomes unstable? When the archivist misplaces entire chapters, or memories lose their anchor in time? For some, this is not imagination, it is daily reality. And when the sense of past falters, the present begins to unravel with it. That is where we must go next, into the minds of those for whom time itself is fractured, and the now is no longer connected to what came before. Imagine waking up in a room you do not recognize. The bed beneath you is strange, the walls bare. Someone walks in with a warm smile and calls you by name, but their face means nothing to you. They tell you that you've been here before, that you've spoken just hours earlier. You search your mind for the memory, but it is not there. The conversation they describe has vanished, as though it never happened. This is the world for someone whose sense of time has been disrupted by damage to memory systems in the brain. Without the hippocampus, or when it is deeply impaired, the ability to store new experiences collapses. The present moment becomes a small island, surrounded by a fog into which all recent events quickly disappear. One of the most famous cases is that of a man known to science as HM, who lost the ability to form new long-term memories after surgery. He could hold a thought for perhaps 20 seconds, but after that, it was gone. If you met him, turned away, and then met his eyes again, you might see him greet you as if for the first time, over and over. For him, time was broken into fragments, each one fading before the next could fully form. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there are people with hypothymesia, a rare condition in which they can recall nearly every day of their lives in vivid detail. For them, the past is not a distant country. It is an ever-present companion. They can tell you what they ate for breakfast on a random Tuesday decades ago, or what the weather was like on a given date. But this ability comes at a cost. The constant presence of the past can make it hard to live in the present, as though one foot is always caught in yesterday's shadow. These extremes reveal something profound. Your sense of time is not just about clocks or calendars. It is built on the continuity of memory. When that continuity is broken, either by absence or excess, the shape of your life changes. Without memory, there is no true before to contrast with now. With too much memory, the past can drown the present. And yet, even in healthy minds, there are milder forms of this instability. Trauma, for example, can fracture time in subtler ways. A person who has lived through a shocking event might feel that it happened yesterday, no matter how many years have passed. In moments of stress, their mind can be pulled back without warning, re-experiencing the event as though it were happening again. This is not just memory, it is temporal collapse, where the boundaries between then and now dissolve. To visualize this, imagine your life as a long thread. Each moment is a bead strung in order. When memory falters, beads can fall away, leaving gaps. When trauma strikes, the thread can loop back on itself, tangling so that one bead is touched again and again, while others are ignored. Either way, the smooth flow of time as you feel it is interrupted. The brain has mechanisms to keep this thread intact. Networks in the prefrontal cortex help place memories in sequence, while others in the parietal lobe keep track of the temporal context, what came first, what came after. Damage to these systems can lead to distortions, where events are remembered but in the wrong order, or where the distance between them feels exaggerated or compressed. And here lies the deeper truth. Time in the mind is not a simple river flowing from past to present. It is a tapestry, constantly being rewoven. When the weaver falters, the pattern changes. For some, the fabric tears entirely. But there is another way the mind distorts time, one that has nothing to do with memory loss or damage. It happens in moments of intense emotion, when time itself seems to change speed, stretching or shrinking as if under invisible hands. And to understand that, we must step into the moments when fear, joy or awe take hold and the clock inside you begins to bend. You are standing on a high ledge, toes curling over the edge, looking down at water far below. The air feels thinner here, the light sharper. Your heart beats faster. You hear the rush of your own breath in your ears. The second before you jump seems to stretch, becoming so long and full that it feels as though you could live an entire lifetime inside it. This is the slow motion effect, the way fear or danger can make time appear to dilate, stretching seconds into long, detailed panoramas. It is not that the world has slowed down, rather your brain has shifted into a heightened state of awareness. In moments of threat, the amygdala, an almond-shaped region deep within your brain, floods your system with signals that boost attention and sharpen sensory detail. You are no longer drifting with time's current. You are counting every ripple in the water. Experiments with free-falling participants have shown that, while people believe time slows dramatically in these moments, their actual ability to perceive events faster does not improve. What changes is memory. Under stress, the brain records more information per unit of time, filling each second with a denser stack of impressions. When recalled, these moments seem to have lasted longer simply because they hold more detail. It is as though a film reel suddenly shifted from a smooth 24 frames per second to hundreds of frames in the same span. When you look back, the sheer volume of frames makes the event feel stretched. The clock never changed speed, only the richness of the recording did. But fear is not the only emotion that bends time. Joy can make it vanish. Think of a conversation that seemed to last minutes, but stretched over hours, or a day so full of laughter that the sun seemed to fall without warning. In such moments, the brain's reward systems light up, releasing dopamine that focuses attention on pleasure rather than duration. You are too engaged in living to measure. Awe, too, has its own signature. Standing before a vast canyon or under a star-filled sky, you may feel that time has slowed, not because of fear, but because the mind is overwhelmed by scale. In awe, attention widens rather than narrows, and the usual rhythm of thought feels suspended, as if the brain itself is pausing to take in the immensity of what it sees. These distortions are reminders that your experience of time is deeply personal. Two people can share the same external moment and live it at entirely different speeds, depending on their state of mind. For one, seconds might drag; for the other, they might race. If you think of your brain as a musician playing along to life's metronome, emotion is the hand that pushes or pulls at the tempo. It cannot break the beat entirely, but it can stretch and compress the notes, changing the shape of the song. Yet there is a deeper question beneath this. If emotional states can warp time so profoundly, what does that say about the idea of a true duration? Is there such a thing for the human mind, or is every moment you have ever lived measured only by the drumbeat inside you, one that changes with every shift of feeling? To answer that, we have to push past the moments when the world is loud and urgent, into those rare spaces where it is silent, where the senses fall still, and the inner clock is left to keep time entirely on its own. That is where the nature of time becomes even stranger. Imagine being sealed inside a room with no windows, no clocks, and no sound but the soft rhythm of your own breathing. The air is still. The light, if there is any, is constant, neither fading nor brightening. Minutes, hours, days, they begin to lose their edges. Without cues from the outside world, time becomes a shapeless thing, slipping between your fingers. In laboratories studying sensory deprivation, people often report that in such environments, their internal sense of time begins to drift. Some believe only minutes have passed when hours have gone by. Others feel they've endured days when only a short span has elapsed. This isn't just boredom, it's the unveiling of what your brain's internal clock is like when left to run without any external calibration. Normally, your perception of time is anchored by cues: the sun moving across the sky, the sound of traffic, the rhythm of conversations, even subtle changes, shadows shifting on the wall, the scent of coffee cooling, help your brain measure passing moments. Without them, your inner clock is like a compass without a magnetic field. Deep inside your brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the same conductor we met earlier, relies heavily on light signals to align your biological day with the planet's rotation. Remove those light cues, and the clock begins to slip. People living in such isolation often settle into cycles slightly longer than 24 hours, evidence that, without the world's rhythm to guide it, your body runs on its own schedule. But the strangeness runs deeper than your body's daily cycle. In sensory deprivation, the brain's short-term timing systems also become unstable. Without new sights, sounds, or tactile events to mark the passage of seconds, the intervals between mental beats can stretch or compress unpredictably. Time becomes not just hard to measure, it becomes something you feel differently moment to moment. Some people describe a kind of time vertigo, where their thoughts and actions feel disconnected from any measurable duration. It's not just that they don't know the time, it's that the concept itself feels thin, almost imaginary. In these conditions, your mind is forced to reveal its reliance on the world outside to keep its temporal bearings. And yet this is also a kind of purity, stripped of external structure. Time, in sensory deprivation, becomes wholly personal. It bends to your focus, your emotions, even your body's subtle rhythms. A slow breath can feel like an age. A burst of thought can collapse an hour into nothing. This makes the question more pressing. If your sense of time can unravel so completely when cut off from the environment, then perhaps real time is not something you carry within you at all. Perhaps it is a collaboration between your mind and the signals the world provides. Remove one half of the partnership and the other reveals its fragility. But if that is true, if the mind's clock depends on the world's cues, what happens when those cues are not just absent, but actively misleading, when the world you are in has its own rhythms that conflict with your body's? To find out, we must look at the deeper, slower beat that underlies your entire life, the rhythm written into your biology long before you were born. Every morning, before you even open your eyes, a rhythm has already been set in motion. It is older than your thoughts, older than your memories, older even than the world as you know it. It is the slow, steady drum of your circadian cycle, the body's built-in day. This cycle is guided by a tiny master clock in your brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but its reach extends to every cell in your body. Hormones rise and fall in time with it. Temperature shifts subtly across the day. Even the expression of your genes follows its rhythm, turning some biological processes on while dimming others. Without this deep internal structure, your sense of time would be adrift. Light is the baton that keeps this orchestra in sync. When dawn breaks and photons strike the back of your eyes, the signal travels straight to the master clock, telling it now is morning. Hormones like cortisol begin to rise, preparing you for alertness. Hours later, as evening falls and darkness grows, melatonin begins to flow, nudging you toward rest. This interplay of light and dark is so powerful that moving suddenly to a different time zone can leave your entire system misaligned, a jet-lagged confusion where your body still lives in one day while the world outside has moved to another. But the circadian cycle is not the only rhythm shaping your life. Within it are smaller cycles, ultradian rhythms, that repeat many times a day. These govern patterns of alertness, focus, and even creativity. You might notice waves in your day when your mind feels sharp and your energy high, followed by valleys when you grow sluggish. These cycles, usually around 90 minutes long, are another form of internal timekeeping. To picture this, imagine a great wheel turning slowly. That's your circadian rhythm. Inside it, smaller gears spin faster. That's your ultradian cycles. Together they form the clockwork of your biology, and though they are invisible, they set the tempo for how you feel, think, and act. What's remarkable is how these rhythms shape not just your body, but your mind's perception of time itself. When your cycles are aligned with the world, when you wake with the sun, rest at night, and follow your natural peaks and troughs, time feels smoother, more predictable. But disrupt them by staying up through the night, working under artificial light, or crossing time zones, and your internal and external clocks fall out of sync. Hours can feel longer or shorter. Days can feel out of order. Think of it like dancing with a partner. When you move in sync, the steps feel effortless. When one of you is off the beat, every move feels awkward. Your mind and body are partners in this dance with time, and when they disagree, you feel it in the very texture of your hours. This raises an unsettling point. If your sense of time can be shaped so strongly by cycles written in your cells, then perhaps time as you know it is partly a side effect of living in a body tuned to the planet's rotation. Remove the planet, or change its day, and the very architecture of your temporal world would shift. And that leads to a provocative thought experiment. If you could step into a place where the sun never rises and never sets, where no external clock exists, and your body's cycles drift freely, how would you experience time? Would it slow into long, dreamlike stretches? Would it fragment into disjointed bursts? We can begin to answer that by looking not at the body's slow, steady beat, but at the quick, flickering rhythms that mark your attention from moment to moment, and how they can warp time in ways both subtle and profound. You are sitting at a desk, reading a book. The world outside the words dissolves the clock on the wall, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the slow passing of the afternoon. All that exists is the page in front of you. You look up eventually and feel the shock of it. Hours have slipped past unnoticed. This is one of the brain's simplest but most powerful tricks. Attention is a sculptor, and time is the clay. When you focus intently on something, you change the pace at which you experience the passing of moments. It is not that time itself has changed speed, it is that your awareness has narrowed, stripping away the cues you normally use to measure it. Neuroscientists have traced this effect to networks spread across the brain, particularly in the parietal cortex and basal ganglia, where time intervals are processed. These regions do more than keep a beat. They constantly compare internal predictions with incoming sensory data. When your attention locks onto a single task, fewer external signals are fed into that system, and the brain's sense of duration becomes distorted. You can think of it like a metronome hidden inside you. Normally, it keeps time with the world's music, pausing when a bird flies past, tapping faster when someone speaks. But when you focus deeply, you mute all but one sound, and the metronome begins to follow that single rhythm. The rest of the orchestra, the footsteps outside, the ticking clock, vanishes from its measure. This works in both directions. Intense focus on a repetitive, low-engagement task, waiting for a web page to load, standing in line makes time drag. Here, attention is on the passing itself. Each moment is counted and recounted. But in flow states, those moments when you are fully immersed in a challenging, absorbing task, attention is on the action, not the clock. Hours can vanish because you have stopped measuring them. This interplay between attention and time perception is why environments rich with change and novelty can feel faster in the moment, but longer in retrospect, and why monotonous stretches can feel slow as you live them, yet short when you recall them later. Attention not only shapes your present, it leaves fingerprints on your memory, which then alters how you think the moment unfolded. There's another layer here, the mind's habit of predicting. At any moment, your brain is running a simulation of what's about to happen next, down to fractions of a second. This predictive timing is what allows you to catch a ball, finish someone's sentence, or tap your foot in rhythm with music. When your attention is fully engaged, these predictions become so precise that you hardly notice the passing of time at all, because your brain is living inside the next moment before it arrives. But attention has its limits. When the mind splits focus, when you try to watch a show, answer a message, and sip your tea all at once, your perception of time changes again. The more your awareness fragments, the less coherent your timeline becomes. You may finish the hour not quite sure where it went, because your attention never anchored itself long enough to mark its passing. If your perception of time can change so easily with the simple shifting of focus, it raises a deeper question. Is the pace of your life something the world dictates to you, or something you create for yourself by choosing where to place your awareness? To explore that question, we need to turn toward one of the mind's most remarkable powers, the ability to live in moments that have not yet happened, to experience slices of the future as vividly as the present, because in doing so, the brain blurs the line between what is now and what is yet to come. You stand at the edge of a stage, heart pounding. The curtain is still closed, but in your mind, you are already out there. You feel the weight of the spotlight, hear the faint hum of the microphone, sense the audience's quiet anticipation. You haven't moved, and yet you've already lived the first moments of what's about to happen. This is your brain's ability to anticipate, to construct the future before it arrives. It is not mere imagination, it is simulation, woven from memory, pattern recognition, and emotion. By drawing on your past, your mind rehearses the next moments, sometimes with such richness that the boundary between real and imagined time blurs. In neuroscience, this is tied to networks that span the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and parietal lobes, the same regions that stitch together your personal timeline. These systems use stored experiences as raw material, rearranging them to build scenarios of what might happen. This is why imagining walking into a new building can feel strangely similar to remembering one you've already visited. The same neural pathways are lighting up, guiding you through an event that has not yet occurred. Your brain does this constantly, often without your awareness. When you reach for a cup, you predict its weight and temperature before touching it. When you cross the street, you predict the movement of cars before stepping off the curb. In more complex forms, you might rehearse conversations in your head, or picture a future trip so vividly that you feel the excitement in your chest. This predictive power can bend your sense of time in unexpected ways. Anticipation often makes waiting feel longer. Think of a child counting the days until their birthday, or the way a few hours before an important meeting can feel stretched thin. Here, the brain's simulation loops over and over, amplifying attention to the not yet until the present seems to drag. But in some cases, anticipation can make time vanish. Consider the moments before a leap into something thrilling, starting a race, stepping on stage, making a declaration you've rehearsed 1,000 times. Because the brain has already run the scenario so many times, the transition from before to after can feel instantaneous, as if you've skipped the middle entirely. This interplay between future and present also shapes how you remember. Studies have shown that imagining a future event can plant details into memory as though they had already happened, making it harder later to distinguish between the real and the rehearsed. Your timeline becomes porous, the future leaking backward into the present shaped by shadows of what has yet to occur. There is a philosophical dimension to this as well. If your mind is constantly rehearsing what's next, are you ever truly in the present, or are you always living just ahead of yourself, like a runner leaning forward into the next stride? Some spiritual traditions speak of this as a challenge, to quiet the forward pull and settle fully into now. But from a biological perspective, anticipation is not an accident, it is survival. Predicting what's next allows you to act before the moment demands it, to catch a falling glass before it shatters, to step aside before a collision. Your mind is a time traveler, not for pleasure, but for protection. And yet there are moments when this protective skill becomes disorienting, when the brain's forward reach and its backward glance lose their balance. In certain conditions, the very structure of past, present, and future can dissolve, leaving only fragments of experience with no clear order. It is in those states where time itself seems to vanish that we begin to see just how much of it is built, moment by moment, inside the mind. Picture yourself in a hospital room, lying still while a machine hums softly nearby. Electrodes trace tiny movements of electricity across your scalp. The technician asks you to close your eyes. You expect the darkness to feel the same as always, calm, continuous, but instead something strange begins to happen. The moments seem to fragment. Thoughts appear like brief flashes of light, each disconnected from the last. Then there's a pause and another flash. It's as if your mind is no longer flowing forward, but leaping between islands of awareness. This sensation, though unusual in everyday life, has been studied in altered states, whether induced by meditation, certain neurological conditions, or even through the effects of specific drugs. In these states, the brain's normal binding of moments can loosen. Instead of a smooth film of experience, time can be perceived as a sequence of discrete frames. One theory holds that consciousness itself may operate in pulses, tiny windows of perception, perhaps tens or hundreds of milliseconds long, stitched together so quickly that they appear continuous. Like the flicker of a film projector, your mind presents these frames as an unbroken reel. But under certain conditions, the stitching slows, and you begin to feel the spaces between the frames. In epilepsy, for instance, some patients report sudden time distortions before or after a seizure, moments in which they feel suspended, caught between beats of an invisible clock. In extreme fatigue or during sensory deprivation, similar effects can occur. The sense of flow falters, and awareness becomes a series of isolated instants. Even in less dramatic circumstances, you may have tasted this sensation, a sudden scare that freezes you, a moment of awe where you feel you could count the heartbeat of the world. or a deep meditation in which the boundaries between moments dissolve. All are glimpses into the possibility that time, as you live it, is not continuous at all. This is not just a curiosity. If consciousness is indeed built from discrete slices of perception, then what you experience as now might be more like a frame in a film strip, one of many, quickly replaced by the next. The continuity is a construction, a story your mind tells to make these frames feel connected. And here's where the thought turns unsettling. Between those frames you do not exist in any experiential sense. If the projector stopped, so would the film of your life, not in the past, not in the future, but in the present itself. Time, for you, would vanish. Some philosophers have seized on this to argue that time may be more like a sequence of mental events than a property of the universe itself. The seconds you feel passing may belong more to the rhythm of your own awareness than to any cosmic clock. If this is true, then your sense of living in a continuous present is not reality, it is a performance. And just as performances can speed up, slow down, or even stop, so too can the flow of time in your mind. Which begs the question, if your brain is the stage on which time plays, what happens when the stage is flooded with chaos? When the senses themselves bring in too much too fast, and the inner clock cannot keep up? That is where we turn next, into the overwhelming, almost timeless states that come when reality arrives faster than the mind can arrange it. You are driving late at night, the road quiet beneath your tires, when suddenly a car runs a red light ahead. You swerve sharply, tires screeching, heart pounding. The scene plays out in fragments, headlights too bright, the sound of rubber tearing at asphalt, a blur of metal. Hours later, the memory is still vivid, but it feels strange, as if the pieces are out of order. This is one of the hallmarks of trauma. Time shatters. The normal thread that ties before, during, and after into a smooth sequence is snapped. You may remember the smell of burning rubber before the sound of the crash, or the moment after impact before the moment of collision itself. The brain, overwhelmed by a flood of sensory data and adrenaline, struggles to weave it into a single, coherent timeline. In such moments, the amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm, floods your body with signals, ramping up attention to survival cues. The hippocampus, responsible for contextualizing memories, works alongside it, but the sheer intensity of the event can disrupt its normal pattern. Instead of a clean narrative, you are left with a collection of intense snapshots, each stamped with fear. These fragments don't always stay in the past. In post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), they can return suddenly and without warning, not as memories to be observed, but as experiences to be relived. The boundary between then and now dissolves, and the body reacts as if the danger is happening again. This is not just a psychological trick, it's a disruption in the brain's ability to correctly place events in time. It's as if your mental archivist has thrown a pile of photographs onto the floor, and every so often one drifts upward into view without any context for when it belongs. A sound, a smell, a flicker of light, any of these can pull you back into the moment of impact. Interestingly, this distortion can move in the opposite direction as well. Some trauma survivors describe a kind of accelerated time in the moment, an almost cinematic fast forward where the event unfolds in a blur, with only certain details preserved. In these cases, the brain may be prioritizing action over recording, stripping away the in-between moments so that only the essential cues for survival remain. Trauma does not just warp the memory of an event, it can alter how a person experiences time long after. Days can feel short and repetitive, the mind locked in loops of intrusive recall, or they can feel endlessly long, stretched by hypervigilance, the constant scanning for danger. This reveals something deep about time in the mind. It is not a neutral backdrop, it is an active process shaped by emotion and biology, and it can be broken, and when it breaks, the consequences ripple forward, affecting not only the memory of a single event, but the pacing of a life. Yet not all distortions of time are born from danger or fear. The mind's clock can also twist in ways that are playful, surreal, and strangely liberating, particularly when it is free from the rules of waking reality. To see that, we must turn to a realm where time often abandons all logic, where minutes can hold entire lifetimes and years can pass in the space of a breath. The realm of dreams. You are walking through a city you've never seen before. The streets are lined with trees that seem to lean toward you, their leaves whispering in a language you almost understand. You check your watch, though you don't remember putting it on, and see the hands spinning wildly. The sun moves across the sky in seconds. Somewhere inside you know none of this is possible, and yet it feels as real as the morning you woke up. In dreams, time obeys no clock you can trust. A single night's sleep can hold an entire lifetime of events, while in other dreams, moments collapse so quickly that you are swept from scene to scene without any sense of transition. You might find yourself at a childhood home, and then, without moving, in a place that doesn't exist at all. The flow of moments is unbound from the rhythms of waking life. Part of this freedom comes from the way the dreaming brain operates. During REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreams, areas involved in sensory processing and emotion, like the visual cortex and amygdala, are highly active. Meanwhile, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which in waking life helps you keep track of time and logic, is much less engaged. With the timekeeper partially offline, your mind is free to construct a narrative that bends or ignores duration altogether. In this altered state, sequences of events can be stitched together without any concern for realism. You can experience hours in a few dream minutes, because the brain condenses entire arcs of imagined history into flashes of imagery and feeling. Conversely, a single fleeting moment, like falling from a great height, can stretch into a slow, suspended descent that seems to last forever. Dreamtime is not merely chaotic, it often mirrors the emotional tone of the dream itself. A joyful, flowing dream can feel expansive, with time drifting gently forward, while an anxious dream may feel disjointed, jumping unpredictably from one scene to another. The brain's emotional centers, active in REM sleep, color not just the content of dreams, but the very texture of their time. Curiously, the brain does attempt to anchor dream events in a kind of timeline, often borrowing structure from waking memories. This is why a dream can have a before and after, even if those moments defy all spatial or temporal logic. Your mind uses familiar patterns of cause and effect, not to keep the dream realistic, but to keep it narratively satisfying. The boundary between dream time and waking time is not always absolute. In lucid dreaming, when you become aware that you are dreaming, people sometimes report being able to slow down or speed up the unfolding of events. Experiments have even shown that certain timed actions performed in lucid dreams, like counting seconds, take approximately the same duration as in waking life, suggesting that the brain retains some sense of real-world time even in the most fluid states. Dreams reveal a crucial truth about the mind. The sensation of time's passage is not tethered to the external world. It is a construct that can be stretched, compressed, or rearranged entirely, depending on which parts of your brain are in charge of the moment. And if dreams can so easily rewrite the laws of time while you sleep, what does that mean for waking life, where reality feels so much more stable? The answer lies in seeing that even while awake, your brain is constantly telling you a story of time, one that can be bent by attention, emotion, and memory, just as easily as it is in dreams. But before we explore that parallel, we must step into an even stranger domain, altered states of consciousness in waking life, where time is not just distorted but transformed into something unrecognizable. You check the time and feel a small sting. 5 minutes late, and the day already seems to be slipping out of your hands. But step off a plane in another country, and you may discover that 5 minutes is not late at all. It is nothing. People arrive when the sun is a certain height, when the market feels awake, when the first songs of afternoon birds begin. In one place, the clock rules. In another, events rule. And inside your mind, both worlds can shape how long a moment feels. Culture, you discover, is a kind of collective metronome. It teaches you where to place your attention, which intervals matter, and what a good pace of life feels like. In some cities, pavements vibrate with hurry, footsteps are short, speech is fast, and a day is carved into strict slices. In other places, the air itself seems to move more slowly, conversations lean into pauses, plans flex to weather and mood, and the day is measured by the soft choreography of people rather than the hard edge of a clock. You learn to feel time through others. Picture two markets. In the first, every stall opens at 9, closes at 5, and lunches 30 minutes by a bell. In the second, stalls open when the fish arrive, close when the shade reaches the far wall, and lunch is when hunger speaks. Your nervous system adapts. In the first, your inner tempo tightens. Each minute has weight. Each delay draws a thread of tension. In the second, your awareness widens. You take in smells, gestures, weather, and the unhurried drift of conversation as signals that tell you where in the day you are. Language itself nudges your perception. Some tongues speak of the future as something in front of you, others as something behind your back, unseen. Some arrange weeks to start on Monday, others on Sunday. These choices sound small, but they tilt attention, what you anticipate, what you review, how you anchor now. If your speech places tomorrow directly before your eyes, you lean forward as you think. If it tucks tomorrow behind you, you feel its approach rather than see it. Even the metaphors you inherit shape the chemistry of your hours. If time is money, then spending, saving, and wasting time become emotional acts. A minute not used becomes a loss. A task finished early becomes a profit. The body mirrors this belief. Shoulders lift, breath shortens, and your inner clock clicks louder. But if time is a river or a season, waiting becomes part of the art of living. Patience is not a pause, but a current. Your muscles soften, your gaze broadens. Under the skin, the brain negotiates these cultural tempos through entrainment, the quiet process by which internal rhythms align with external patterns. Office bells, commute timetables, school periods, call to prayer, evening bells, market chants, televised kick-off times all act as metrical cues. With repetition, networks that track intervals learn these patterns. Dopamine pulses in anticipation of the next beat, and when the world delivers on time, you feel the satisfaction of a prediction kept. When it doesn't, a tiny error signal ripples through, and irritation rises. In a culture where punctuality is sacred, those error signals arrive often enough to sharpen the edge of your day. In a culture where sequence matters more than schedule, first we greet, then we trade, error signals soften, and small delays feel less like failures, more like texture. Group life multiplies these effects. Humans synchronize without thinking. Footsteps aligning on a bridge, laughter falling into shared rhythm, applause shifting from chaos to a collective beat. The same attunement happens with hours. Work crews break together, musicians gather at dusk, families circle around evening meals. Your brain's social systems watch faces, read posture, and seize the moment when others move, subtly pulling your own timing to match. Alone, your inner clock may wander. In a crowd, it locks to the group. This is why a long ceremony can feel shorter when everyone leans into it, and why a brief wait can feel endless when a whole line of people fidgets and checks their phones. Religious calendars and seasonal rituals extend that synchrony across months and years. Fasts, feasts, pilgrimages, solstices. These are cultural time signatures. They compress anticipation into certain days, elongate reflection into others, and stitch personal memory to communal rhythm. A month of restraint stretches, a night of celebration flashes by. Your timeline becomes musical, crescendos and rests, marked not by numbers, but by shared meaning. There is also the pace of life problem, the friction you feel when your personal tempo and your environment's tempo do not agree. Move to a city that runs faster than your nervous system, and your days thin into a string of small sprints. Your attention fragments, and time becomes a series of obligations to be survived. Move to a town that runs slower than you do, and hours blur. You may feel stranded inside wide spaces between events. The misfit reveals a secret. Time satisfaction is partly tempo matching. When your inner beat and your world's beat harmonize, duration feels just. When they clash, a minute can sting or a day can dull. Consider cues. In one culture, first come, first served, and fairness hangs on order. Your brain enforces that rule with small bursts of pleasure when the line moves and small flashes of anger when it breaks. In another culture, the line is looser, shaped by conversation, age, urgency, and courtesy. The same brain eases, watching relationships measure priority rather than pure sequence. Neither is universal. Both train your expectation of how time should flow among strangers. Technology adds a new layer. Global work means meetings that land at midnight for someone, streaming collapses, broadcast schedules. Delivery arrives faster than bodies can adapt. You live in one time zone while answering the pulse of others. Calendars shuffle, alarms multiply, sleep drifts. The brain tries to reconcile competing beats, and the cost is confusion. You wake with the sun of your street and the clock of another continent. Culture used to be mainly local time. Now it is braided time, and your mind must learn to play in multiple keys. And yet, amid all this, there is a quieter truth. Culture does not only impose time upon you, it offers you ways to craft it. Siestas carve tenderness into afternoons. Long meals return attention to taste and voice. Market days funnel scattered errands into one alive interval. Even the habit of walking rather than rushing recovers the granular texture of streets, the smell of bread, the weight of air, the tiny calendar of light across windows. These choices do not abolish the clock, they soften its edges, reminding you that time can be felt, not just measured. So where does this leave the question that has followed you from the beginning? What if time only exists in your mind? Culture answers softly. Even if the planet spins and stars drift, the time you live is taught to you by others and learned by your body. You did not invent the beat alone. You learned it by watching your parents get ready in the morning, by hearing shutters open on your street, by tasting the first fruit of a season, by kneeling when the bell rang, by cheering with a crowd when the whistle blew. Still, there is one more place to look if you want to feel the boundary of your own tempo, somewhere intimate, where the crowd disappears and only you remain. Because if culture synchronizes you outward, solitude reveals the naked meter of your inner clock. And if crowds can compress minutes, they can also stretch them into something strange and communal. Next, you will step into both, into the hush of being utterly alone and the hum of being utterly together, and feel how each reshapes your hours in a different, unforgettable way. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of a cliff at dawn. The valley below is silent, except for a thread of mist curling through the trees. There's no schedule here, no calendar, no crowd. Only you, the cool air on your skin, and the slow turning of light. You can feel time differently in moments like this, without anyone else to measure it against. It's as if the minutes expand, their edges softening until they feel almost infinite. Solitude alters the mind's clock in ways both subtle and profound. When you are alone, external cues that anchor time, the pace of conversation, the movement of others, the rhythm of shared tasks, fade away. Without them, your brain relies more heavily on internal markers, the tempo of your thoughts, the beat of your heart, the sequence of sensations. These inner signals are less predictable than a clock, which is why time alone can feel either impossibly long or vanishingly short. In neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex plays a quiet but central role here. It's the seat of working memory, the part of your mind that keeps track of unfolding moments. In solitude, without the constant resetting that comes from social interaction, this mental ledger can stretch or contract dramatically. Think of it like an internal spool. In busy company, It turns quickly as events pile in. In stillness, it turns at your own pace, unspooling slowly, or sometimes so quickly you hardly notice the thread running out. There's also the matter of attention. Alone, you might dwell longer on sensations that you'd ignore in a group, the way sunlight crawls across a wall, the shift of wind from one direction to another, the slow cooling of a cup of tea. When attention lingers like this, it creates the illusion of more time passing. But lose yourself in thought, a problem to solve, a memory to revisit, and you can leap across hours without noticing the middle. This is the paradox of solitude. It can stretch or compress time, depending on where your mind wanders. Isolation, though, is different. Prolonged absence of social contact can disrupt the body's circadian rhythms, the natural cycles governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus deep in the brain. This master clock takes cues from light, but also from social interaction, greetings, meals, shared routines. When those cues vanish, the body's sense of when can drift, leading to a feeling of timelessness that's less peaceful and more disorienting. Astronauts in space, researchers in polar winters, and individuals in solitary confinement all report this drift. Days blur, and the mind begins to lose its anchor. Yet solitude is not only about disconnection, it can also be about deep connection to the self. Without the noise of others' timetables, you are free to listen for your own. Some people find that their most accurate sense of time emerges here unshaped by external demands. They wake when rested, eat when hungry, and work or rest when the body inclines. In these conditions, time becomes less a line and more a pulse. The philosophical weight of solitude lies in this shift from shared to personal time. In groups, time is an agreement. We start together, we end together. Alone, time becomes a private negotiation between you and the moment. You may find yourself asking, "How long have I been here? How much longer should I stay?" The answer is not on a watch, but in a feeling, an internal yes or no that only you can hear. And yet, as freeing as solitary time can be, it also reminds you that humans are wired for rhythm with others. The brain's mirror neurons, the circuits that fire when you watch someone act, are part of what keeps social time in sync. Without them echoing the gestures and movements of another person, your internal beat can drift. That drift is not necessarily bad, but it can make the return to a group feel jarring, as if stepping into a song midway. What is remarkable is how quickly your brain can retune. A single conversation, a shared meal, even walking alongside someone can bring your steps, speech, and internal intervals back into harmony with theirs. The brain thrives on this synchrony, rewarding it with subtle releases of oxytocin and dopamine, neurochemical signatures of belonging. Which brings us to the other side of the coin. If solitude is the study of your own tempo, crowds are the art of shared time. And nowhere is this more vivid than in the moments when thousands of bodies move as one, when personal clocks dissolve into a collective beat, so powerful that it can alter memory, emotion, and even physiology. Next, we will step into that current, into the heat, sound, and movement of a crowd, and feel what happens when your mind's clock is swallowed by the rhythm of many. The stadium trembles. Tens of thousands of people rise to their feet, voices folding into one enormous sound. You feel it in your chest before you hear it clearly, a vibration that turns into rhythm, a rhythm that turns into song. For a moment, you cannot tell whether you are singing or being sung through. The boundaries of your time blur. Being in a crowd changes the way you experience time, because it changes the way your brain processes the present. In the press of bodies, your senses are flooded. Visual patterns of movement, the thud of collective footsteps, the roar or hush that sweeps through everyone at once. These synchronized signals feed into your brain's timing networks, locking your internal rhythms to those of the group. This is entrainment in its most intense form, the alignment of biological tempo with the beat of many. In such moments, individual awareness can fade. The prefrontal cortex, which normally keeps your personal timeline in order, loosens its grip, while midbrain and limbic systems, more ancient circuits take over. These are the circuits attuned to music, to ritual, to the instinct of moving together for safety or celebration. When they dominate, you may lose track of duration entirely, swept instead into cycles of call and response, rise and fall. Festivals, concerts, marches, and ceremonies all harness this phenomenon. In these shared spaces, time is often measured not in hours or minutes, but in the sequence of collective acts. The first song, the dance break, the final chant. The crowd becomes a clock, and you live inside its pulse. There's a neurochemical layer too. Group synchrony triggers the release of endorphins, which not only elevate mood, but can distort perception of time by softening awareness of discomfort or fatigue. This is why a 6-hour dance can feel like a flash, or why a long vigil with others can feel shorter than the same hours spent alone. The body is rewarded for staying in the group rhythm, and your mind interprets the flow as smoother, easier. But crowd time isn't always fast. It can also stretch. Think of waiting with others for a speaker to appear or for a game to resume after a tense pause. In those moments, every second feels shared, magnified by the combined attention of thousands. You are all holding your breath together, and that holding seems to slow the world. Crowds also shape memory in unique ways. An event witnessed in a group is often remembered as having lasted longer, richer in detail than it actually did. This is partly because the brain encodes not only your own actions and sensations, but also those you see mirrored in others. The lifted hands, the turning heads, the synchronized gasp. The sum of these impressions makes the moment feel bigger in time. Technology has found ways to mimic and amplify this ancient social magic. Live streams with chat feeds, multiplayer games, mass virtual events, all create artificial crowds whose togetherness can bend time in similar ways. Even when you are physically alone, your brain can synchronize with a digital group through shared beats, countdowns, and reactions. The clock on your wall is not the one you are living by. You are living by the countdown to the next shared moment. This opens a striking possibility. If the mind can be tuned to group time through nothing more than shared cues and attention, then perhaps the very pace of your life can be chosen, or at least shaped, by the company you keep. Surround yourself with those who live in long, unhurried arcs, and your hours may soften. Join those who race from one task to the next, and your time will sharpen into quick, clipped beats. And if both solitude and crowds can so dramatically bend your experience of time, what happens when neither applies? When you are in a space not bound by sun or season, where time is dictated entirely by human invention? To answer that, we step into the realm of artificial time environments, where the natural world's cues are stripped away and replaced with man-made rhythms, sometimes to our benefit, sometimes to our cost. You walk into a casino at night. The air is cool, the lights bright, the carpets patterned in colors that seem to pull your gaze inward. There are no windows, no clocks. The music is constant, neither rising nor falling with the hour. People move around you in a flow that feels endless. No rush, no pause, just a hum of activity that could belong to any time at all. This is artificial time, a world where natural cues, sunrise, sunset, shifting shadows, even hunger, are intentionally muted or replaced. It can be built for entertainment, as in casinos, but also for work like factories that run on rotating shifts, or for research such as the sealed chambers, where scientists study circadian rhythms. When you strip away environmental anchors, the brain's master clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus is left to rely on whatever cues remain. In a casino, those cues are designed to keep you engaged. Lighting that never dims, soundscapes that maintain steady energy, aromas released to keep you alert. The absence of time signals prevents your internal rhythms from winding down, and the result is often hours passing faster than you realize. Shift work is a more demanding version of this. Nurses, pilots, and factory workers often operate on schedules that ignore the natural day. sleeping during daylight and working through the night. This constant adjustment can lead to circadian misalignment, where the body's hormonal cycles and temperature rhythms no longer match the imposed schedule. Fatigue, slower reaction times, and even mood changes follow, not because time itself has changed, but because the body's time and the external demands have fallen out of sync. Technology extends artificial time into our homes and pockets. A glowing screen at midnight floods your eyes with blue light, sending a signal to your brain that it's still day. Streaming platforms release shows in entire seasons, dissolving the week-by-week pacing that once governed TV watching. Social media operates in an endless present, where new content arrives constantly and older moments resurface without warning, without boundaries. Your mind can drift into a state where earlier and later feel less distinct, replaced by a single, ongoing now. Some artificial timescapes are meant to help. Hospitals may use carefully tuned lighting to keep patients' rhythms aligned, even in windowless wards. Submarines use colored lights to cue day and night for crews who may not see the sun for weeks. In these cases, the built environment becomes a kind of prosthetic for the natural cycle, guiding the body's timekeeping systems to maintain health. But there is an undercurrent to all artificial time. It reveals how dependent your sense of duration is on environmental context. Remove or replace that context, and your perception shifts, sometimes to the point where you feel as though you've stepped outside of time altogether. Philosophically, these environments pose a question. If your mind's sense of time can be so easily rewritten by architecture, sound, and light, is there such a thing as a true now? Or is every now shaped by the frame in which it sits, whether that frame is a forest, a market, a subway, or a glowing screen? This leads naturally to the rarest and most intriguing experiences of all, the ones in which time seems to disappear, not because it is being manipulated, but because it feels irrelevant. Moments so full, so rich, that they slip beyond measurement, leaving you with the strange conviction that for a little while you stepped outside the clock entirely. Those are the eternal moments, and they are where we turn next. You are sitting across from someone you love. The room is quiet, except for the sound of their voice, the small shifts in their expression, the way the light falls across their face. There is no thought of the next hour, no memory of the one before. There is only this scene, this breath, this exchange. Later, you will realize you cannot say how long it lasted. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. These are the eternal moments, instances where time's usual current seems to stop, leaving you suspended in a depth of presence that is rare and unmistakable. They can happen in joy, in awe, in deep intimacy, or even in sorrow. They are not defined by their length, but by their fullness, as if every detail has expanded to fill all available space in your awareness. In neuroscience, such moments are often linked to the brain state called flow, though not all eternal moments are about action. Flow arises when challenge and skill are in perfect balance, pulling your attention so fully into the present that the usual monitoring of time falls away. Activity in the prefrontal cortex, which handles much of your timekeeping and self-awareness, decreases, a phenomenon known as transient hypofrontality. With the inner narrator quiet, you stop counting the minutes. Or can trigger a similar shift, standing at the edge of a canyon, watching a newborn take its first breath, listening to a symphony swell. These experiences recruit wide networks across the brain, uniting sensory, emotional, and memory systems into a single absorbing moment. Studies have shown that awe can make people feel they have more time, as if the experience expands the space of the present. Eternal moments often carry an aftertaste of timelessness when recalled. Memory stores them with unusual clarity and richness, perhaps because they are encoded not only by the hippocampus, but also by the amygdala, which flags emotionally charged events for deeper storage. When you revisit them, you may feel a ghost of the original suspension, as though stepping back into that bubble outside of time. Philosophically, these moments challenge the notion that time is an unbroken line. They feel less like points along a path and more like places, rooms in which you can linger or to which you can return in thought. Some traditions treat them as glimpses of eternity, the mind briefly aligned with something beyond its usual frame. Whether or not you see it this way, the experience reminds you that your sense of time is not fixed. It can open like a window. Eternal moments are not always comfortable. Waiting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of someone you may lose, can stretch into the same suspended quality. Here it is not joy that fills the moment, but the weight of meaning. Time slows because every second matters. Your mind refuses to let any of them pass unnoticed. These experiences leave a paradox in their wake. They are measured not by duration but by depth, yet they feel truer than most hours or days. If time were truly something outside of you, fixed and absolute, how could it be possible to step into and out of it so completely? And this leads to a daring thought. If such timelessness is possible for moments, could it be possible for a whole life? What would it mean to stop counting time altogether, to live without measuring at all? Could the mind adapt, or would it lose itself without that structure? To explore that, we must venture into the thought experiment at the heart of this journey. What if the mind stopped counting entirely? Imagine waking tomorrow with no clock on the wall, no phone in your pocket, no sun or moon to mark the hours. You open your eyes in a room where the light is constant, not bright, not dim, just steady. Meals arrive, but not on a schedule you can detect. There are no cues from others, no changes in temperature, no sounds that suggest morning or night. The only measure of time is what unfolds in your own mind. At first you might guess at the passing hours by the rhythm of hunger, the rise and fall of energy. But soon even those signals would drift. The body's circadian cycle would still turn, but without reinforcement from light and social patterns, it would begin to free run, sliding forward or backward each day. You might find yourself awake through what once was night, sleeping through what once was morning. Eventually, the very idea of morning or night could dissolve. This is more than speculation. Experiments in temporal isolation, such as those conducted in underground bunkers, have shown that people deprived of external time cues develop their own internal schedules, often slightly longer than 24 hours. Without a shared frame, participants begin to live in a private loop, unmoored from the collective clock. Some report a floating sense of time, where days merge and durations become impossible to estimate. In this state, the prefrontal cortex, which usually keeps events in sequence, has less reliable data to work with. The hippocampus still stores memories, but the gaps between them feel unpredictable, like pages missing from a diary. You might recall what you did, but not how long it took, or how far apart the events were. The psychological effects can be surprising. Some people find the absence of time liberating, as though they've stepped into an endless present where urgency fades. Others find it disorienting, even unsettling. Without time structure, they feel unmoored, their sense of self thinning without the usual scaffold of before and after. Philosophically, living without counting time forces a confrontation with what you actually are in a given moment. Without a plan or deadline, your choices are shaped less by where you are on a timeline, and more by what you feel or need right now. This can strip life to its essence, or leave you lost in its open space. The thought experiment extends further. If humanity as a whole abandoned clocks and calendars, the shared world would fragment. Communities might return to local, event-based time, measured by the arrival of rain, the blooming of a plant, the return of a migrating bird. Others might develop new artificial markers. But without agreement, coordination across distances would collapse. The very idea of now would splinter into thousands of local versions. And here lies the paradox. While time may live only in the mind, it is the sharing of time that allows human societies to function. Alone, you can abandon the clock. Together, you must agree on one. Which brings us to the final step in this journey, standing at the intersection of the personal and the collective, the biological and the philosophical, to ask in full if time is built in the mind and yet binds us together. What is it truly that we are living in? You are sitting at the threshold of a question that has been echoing through this entire journey. If time only exists in your mind, then what exactly are you moving through? Perhaps you think of the universe as a great stage, with events marching across it in order, past behind you, future ahead. But physics complicates that picture. Some theories suggest that time is not a flowing river, but a landscape, all moments existing at once, like pages in a book. From your vantage point, you turn the pages in sequence, but to the universe, the pages may all already be written. Neuroscience tells a different, but equally provocative story. Your brain is less a clock than a storyteller. It gathers sensory input, memory, and prediction, then weaves them into a smooth line you call now. In truth, this now is a reconstruction, a half-second behind reality, smoothed of its rough edges. You are always living just after the fact, yet it feels immediate because the mind edits away the delay. If this is so, then time as you know it is less about the universe's rhythm and more about the brain's need for coherence. Without that story, your world would dissolve into scattered impressions, flashes without sequence. The mind's invention of time is what makes your life feel like a journey rather than a series of unrelated images. Philosophically, this opens a space of choice. If time is constructed, it can be shaped. You can fill it with tasks and deadlines, measuring it in fragments, or you can widen it with stillness, letting moments stretch. The frame you choose changes the life you feel you are living. A minute spent in anxiety can feel longer than an hour in joy. A year spent in routine can vanish more quickly in memory than a single vivid day. This is not to say that clocks and calendars are meaningless. They are the tools that allow us to meet, trade, build, and share. But the deeper truth is that these tools are layered atop something more fragile, the personal experience of duration. Strip away the external structure, and you are left with the raw material of time as the mind experiences it, a pulse of moments shaped by attention, emotion, and memory. The idea that all of time might exist at once does not necessarily make your life less precious. In fact, it can do the opposite. If every moment is in some sense already there, then the present is not racing away from you. It is a place you can inhabit fully. You may not be able to freeze it, but you can deepen it, allowing its textures, sounds, and meanings to saturate your awareness. And if you think of time as something your mind creates, then the richest question is not how much of it do I have, but how do I want to shape it? The answer is not in the clock on your wall, but in the quality of your attention, the stories you tell yourself, and the company you keep. In this way, the paradox resolves. Time both exists in your mind and connects you to others. It is personal and shared, measured and immeasurable, linear and elastic. It is a construction, but one that holds the weight of your life. You stand here now on the thin, shifting line between what has been and what will be, aware that the line itself is drawn by your own mind. And perhaps that is the final gift of this journey, the understanding that the way you live your moments is the way you live your time, and that you can change one by changing the other. And so the journey slows. You have traced time from the steady beat of your heart to the vast, silent theories of the cosmos, watching it shift and bend beneath the weight of emotion, memory, and culture. You have seen it stretch across joy and collapse into grief, dissolve in dreams, and fracture in moments of danger. Now there is no need to follow it further. The questions are still here, soft, open, without demand. They do not push you forward or pull you back. They simply exist like quiet companions. The mind need not solve them tonight. It is enough to know they will wait. Feel how the rhythm has changed since we began, how the pace has softened, the edges rounded, the thoughts that once leapt ahead now linger, letting you see the space between them. The present is not a point you must hold, but an expanse you can rest within, like a field at dusk. You may notice how even your body seems to join this slower current. Breath deepens without effort. Muscles loosen, as though relieved of some invisible weight. The world beyond this moment fades to a hum, no longer measuring you by its ticking hands. Here, there is no clock. There is only the quiet pulse of your own awareness. Let the last traces of the day slip behind you. Let the next hours remain unwritten. You are here, in this interval that belongs entirely to you, your private infinity, unmeasured and unhurried. And when you do step forward again, you may carry with you the knowing that time is not only something that happens to you, but something you can shape. You have felt its elasticity, you have seen its illusions, and you have discovered that the most profound moments are often the ones in which time itself disappears.